Hello everyone, and welcome to the weird, scary and horrible parts of humanity. Today we are going to look at 9 foreigners who, over the period of 9 months in 1978, sailed into one of the most closed societies the world has ever seen and fell victim to one of the most brutal and terrible regimes in history, the Khmer Rouge. To give a very basic rundown of the Khmer Rouge regime, led by the leader Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge engaged in a Cambodian civil war between 1970 and 1975, primarily against North Vietnamese troops who were using supply lines to reach South Vietnam during the Vietnam War. By the 17th of April 1975, the Khmer Rouge had reached Cambodia's capital, Phnom Penh. The country's name was changed to the Democratic Kampuchea, with all people moved into rural areas of Cambodia to rebuild the country on a model of the 11th century. Western medicine was disregarded, temples were destroyed, with libraries and schools closed. Over 4 years, the Khmer Rouge oversaw the killing fields as part of a broad state-sponsored genocide. An estimated 1.7 to 2.5 million people died under the Khmer Rouge, with the majority 1,386,734 people dying at the killing fields. The killing fields were part of the judicial process of the Khmer Rouge for minor or political crimes, with people sent to the killing fields for re-education, which often meant certain death. Others died from disease or starvation, with 1/3 of Cambodian women missing their periods due to starvation, with rations as small as 250 grams, with children, the sick and elderly suffering from malnutrition and starvation. At the time, the country had a population of 8 million, meaning that an estimated 30% of the population was killed. The regime only fell in 1979 when Vietnamese forces invaded the country on the 25th of December 1978, entering Phnom Penh on the 8th of January 1979 with the Kampuchea army woefully unprepared, marking the end of the Khmer Rouge's control of the country and the creation of the People's Republic of Kampuchea under a 10-year occupation of the country by Vietnam. It was into this insanity that American drug smugglers James William Clarke and Lance McNamara sailed on the 23rd of April 1978, on board the Mary Kay. McNamara and Clarke sailed from Santa Barbara, California, where McNamara lived working as a caretaker at a mansion and co-owned a small art gallery. The pair sailed to Thailand with the aim of smuggling high-grade marijuana, Thai stick, back into the United States of America, having been recruited by drug smuggler and surfer Paul Reiter, who in the photo on the left is pictured on the right. The trip entailed considerable peril as they would have to pass US Drug Enforcement Agency officials, the Navy, Thai Navy officials, the Vietnamese Navy, with Vietnam only reunited by communist forces, signalling the end of the Vietnam War on the 30th of April 1975, with the communist regime carrying much hostility towards Americans, and the Khmer National Navy. Crossing the Gulf of Thailand, the pair were intercepted by Khmer Rouge patrol boats who intended to intercept Vietnamese naval craft and enforce a ban on fishing by Thai fishermen. This is despite the pair being outside the 12-mile territorial limit of Cambodia and in open water. Fearing that the Khmer officials were pirates, Clarke and McNamara tried to outrun them, with Clarke shooting upon forces with a revolver, before resorting to McNamara's pearl-handled .45 Colt, utilizing a 20mm cannon. The Navy hit the Mary Kay's hull, blindfolded the Americans, took them hostage, and once on the mainland, threw them into the back of a truck. The pair were then driven to Sihanoukville and to Phnom Penh, to Security Prison 21, one of the most notorious prisons as part of a killing field where an estimated 18,145 prisoners were incarcerated during the Khmer Rouge. Only 12 people would survive the brutal torture. The prison was overseen by the notorious Kang Kek Iew, also known as Comrade Dutch. What happened to the pair from here is not exactly known. The hysterical Khmer Rouge were convinced that they had been infiltrated by foreign agents, with survivor of security prison 21 Ung Pek recalling cries of pain as a teenage guard dragged an American across the courtyard by his beard, with both McNamara and Clarke having bushy beards. Both men would have been subjected to unimaginable torture, with chains attached in beds, wooden frames in the garden, with inmates hung upside down with their heads dropped into vessels of water and subjected to torture on racks. Both were most likely shackled together or chained to the wall of cells, kept under starvation, and tortured for months in order to force the pair to admit that they were CIA agents. Following the fall of the regime in 1979, it was found that Clarke had confessed under torture, signing a piece of paper noting the key country to watch in Southeast Asia is Cambodia, the most successful communist country. The US thought that if Cambodia became strong enough, it would invade Thailand and turn it into communism. After Thailand, it would be very easy to make Malaysia communist, and then Singapore would be threatened. Clarke admitted to photographing boats, islands, and radio installations of CIA, stating that he had been paid $1.1 million and enlisted McNamara for a $400,000 cut. Both met their deaths in Security Prison 21, with special measures taken to dispose of the foreigner's body. Clarke was there for a minimum of 30 days. However, the time that McNamara spent in prison cannot be calculated, as his record only appears once. The orders of execution came from General Secretary of the Khmer Rouge, Brother No. 2 Nuon Chea, and were handed down to Kang Kek Iew. Execution of all 9 Westerners, including Clarke and McNamara, was subjected through a blow to the back of the head or neck with a metal bar, ox cart axle or bamboo post, causing blunt force trauma. A further 3 Westerners fell victim to the Khmer Rouge on board the Foxy Lady. Stuart Robert Glass was born on the 25th of June 1951 in London and migrated to Richmond, Canada, later working in Vancouver before returning to his native London. Glass smuggled Moroccan hashish into the United Kingdom on 3 occasions before being arrested on the 3rd occasion. He then spent 6 months in prison Wormwood Scrubs, a Category B men's local prison located in White City, London. Glass then travelled with his wife along the hippie trail to New Delhi, India, and then flew to Australia. While living in Darwin in the Northern Territory, Glass met New Zealander Kerry George Hamill, who was 28 years old. The pair, along with Hamill's girlfriend Gail Colley, purchased the Foxy Lady and sailed to Timor, now Timor-Leste, and then to Flores in eastern Indonesia, and then on to Bali, where Colley left and travelled separately to Penang, Malaysia. Australian John Seeley crewed them to Singapore, with the duo continuing to Penang, where they met Colley and Australian Philip Parsonson, who sailed them to Phuket, Thailand. Colley and Parsonson then left the pair, and in June 1978, they sailed to Kuala Terengganu in Malaysia, where they met English citizen John Dawson Dewhirst. Born in 1952 in Newcastle, Dewhirst studied English at Loughborough University and trained to be a teacher. Following this, in 1977, he travelled to Tokyo to teach English, writing for the Japanese Times, the largest and oldest English-speaking newspaper in Japan, from June 1977 until January 1978. In July 1978, Dewhirst travelled to Kuala Terengganu to visit a friend on his way from Tokyo back to England, where he met Glass and Hamill. Spending a month in Kuala Terengganu, the 3 headed to Bangkok, the capital of Thailand, to pick up and smuggle Thai sticks. However, it is unknown if all 3 of the men, particularly Dewhirst, knew of the smuggling intentions. On the 13th of August 1978, the Foxy Lady was intercepted by the Khmer Navy near Koh Tung Island, the biggest group of Cambodian islands off the coast of Siekville province in the Gulf of Thailand, approximately 52 kilometers southwest of mainland Cambodia, with no inhabitants. During the siege and capture of the Foxy Lady, Glass was shot dead and drowned. Dewhirst and Hamill were then taken to mainland Cambodia and to the notorious S21 prison. Subjected to torture, severe injury and starvation, Dewhirst was detained for a minimum of 61 days and Hamill was detained for a minimum of 35 days. Both Hamill and Dewhirst were forced to confess that they were CIA spies in a series of confessions between the 3rd of September and the 13th of October 1978. Their confessions were a mix of their lives, with Hamill discussing his life in New Zealand and Dewhirst his life in the United Kingdom, as well as complete and utter fiction. The pair met the same fate as Clarke and McNamara, with the pair allegedly killed by Kang Kek Iew, with their bodies burnt. Hamill's brother John committed suicide 8 months after finding out of his brother's death following the fall of the Khmer regime. Hamill's older brother, Robert, became a New Zealand rower, winning silver in the lightweight men's double sculls at the 1994 Eagle Creek Park World Championships, rowing in the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, and gaining the world record for rowing the Atlantic in 1997. Robert stated that rowing was his saviour from the grief of his brother's unexpected death. He also participated in making the documentary film Brother Number One, which aired on TV3 in New Zealand, now known as Free and the largest privately owned TV station in New Zealand, where Robert aimed to discover what happened to his older brother in Cambodia. On the 2nd of November 1978, Robert Keith Dean and David Lloyd Scott, pictured, were captured by the Khmer Rouge on board the Sanuk yacht. You might be wondering why the hell people would be venturing around the Gulf of Thailand with so many casualties of Westerners at the hands of the Khmer Rouge. Well, no one outside of Cambodia knew about these casualties, and it was presumed that the men and their boats had gone missing at sea. It was not until late 1979 and early 1980, following the fall of the Khmer Rouge regime, that ABC News journalist Jim Laura and freelance photographer Edward Raisin reported on the death of Dewhirst, Hamill and Glass, which is when the families found out what happened to their loved ones. Dean was a 35-year-old pub worker in Sydney, Australia, and Scott was 31 years old from Western Australia and a band manager. The pair went on a sailing adventure of Southeast Asia. A letter found at S21, which was purportedly written by Dean, hinted at drug smuggling. However, the writer of the letter was never confirmed. Instead of sailing to Thailand, they strayed into Cambodian waters and were intercepted by the Navy near Polu Wai Island, a tiny rock island in the Gulf of Siam, 96.6 kilometers off Cambodia. Arrested, they were taken to S21 and subjected to torture. Cham Sui, who worked as a guard at the prison, alleged that a Westerner who looked like Scott was dragged into the street, had a tire placed around his neck, and was set alight. Of all the Westerners arrested who made it to S21, Dean had the shortest known detainment at S21, having been detained for a minimum of 19 days, while Scott was detained for a minimum of 40 days. Both were forced to provide falsified confessions that they were CIA spies recruited in their native Australia, before eventually being killed by Kang Kek Iew. Finally, Christopher Edward DeLance, pictured, and Michael Scott Deeds were intercepted on the 26th of November 1978 on board the Leilani yacht, 2 weeks after Glass and Dean were intercepted on board the Sanuk. Americans DeLance and Scott were captured near Kampong Som, sailing to Thailand to smuggle Thai sticks to the United States of America, having been recruited by Michael Ritter. Taken to S21, with DeLance detained for a minimum of 35 days and Scott for a minimum of 40 days, the pair were subjected to torture, and both were forced to provide confessions that they were CIA spies and subsequently killed. In 2012, DeLance's portrait was identified amongst images of S-21 prisoners. Ritter was eventually jailed for drug smuggling in the United States of America and went on to write the book Thai Sticks, Surfers, Scammers, and the Untold Story of a Marijuana Trade, with author Peter Maguri, who in the left picture is pictured on the left. On the 19th of September 2007, the man who ordered the 9 executions, Nuon Chea, was arrested in Pai Lin province in western Cambodia. Charged with war crimes and crimes against humanity, Chea was sentenced to life in prison, with a further trial convicting him of genocide in 2018. On the 4th of August 2019, he died of natural causes, aged 93, while serving his life sentence. Following the fall of the Khmer Rouge, Kang Kek Iew converted to Christianity in 1995 and was found working for Christian charity World Vision. He is alleged to have committed all 9 murders and oversaw the S-21 prison camp. The first Khmer Rouge leader to be tried by the extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia in 2009, he was convicted for crimes against humanity, murder and torture, and sentenced to 30 years in prison, with Robert Hamill testifying during his trial. Kang Kek Iew's sentence was reduced to 19 years for time served and mitigating factors, before being extended to life imprisonment by the extraordinary chambers and the courts of Cambodia. He remained in solitary confinement until his death of lung disease at the age of 77 on the 2nd of September 2020 in a hospital in Phnom Penh. The remains of the 9 Westerners who were tortured at S-21 have never been found, as their bodies were all burnt. Indeed, the ways in which they were tortured and how long they were at S-21, as well as photos of many of the Westerners murdered by the Khmer Rouge, will never be found due to the overwhelming number of victims within S-21, as well as the lack of record keeping by the Khmer Rouge. As a result, many of the questions surrounding the deaths of these 9 individuals, unless a survivor of S-21 comes forward, or one of the guards at S-21 or a member of the Khmer Rouge comes forward, will never be answered, and we will only have a vague understanding, at best, of why these men ventured into Southeast Asia, how they were entrapped by the Khmer Navy, and what happened to them when they were taken to S-21. Thank you for watching. Please do yourself a favour and hit that like and subscribe button and the bell icon to inform you when new videos come out. It helps more than you know, and your support is truly appreciated. You'll also be seeing 2 other videos for you to check out. Until next time, stay awesome, stay classy, be kind to everyone you meet, and have an amazing day.